Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that too. I always thought my mom was just a little eccentric. That's what I used to tell myself whenever her behavior seemed off, whenever her beauty rituals stretched beyond the normal hours of the night. Growing up, I'd find her in front of her bathroom mirror at 2 in the morning, applying creams, masks, and serums with the kind of dedication you'd expect from a surgeon about to operate. At first, I thought it was harmless. She worked at a high-end cosmetics counter in a department store downtown, Halton's, the kind of place that smelled like perfume the moment you stepped inside. Customers constantly complimented her for looking younger than her age, and she thrived on it. I guess that sort of praise becomes addictive when you've built your whole identity on it. My name is Lena, I'm 17, and I live with my mom, Rachel, and my little brother Ethan in a small town in Oregon. My parents divorced 3 years ago, and while I love my dad, he's more of a weekend presence. We spend every other weekend at his place, me, reluctantly, and Ethan, who still thinks Dad hung the moon. The night this all began, I was sitting on the couch, nursing a soda, half watching a news report that had been dominating every channel for weeks: the Stitcher murders. The anchor's voice was calm and rehearsed, but the details were grotesque. Teen girls found dumped in isolated areas, their throats cut, eyes missing, and strange cross-shaped carvings etched into their skin. I remember shivering and muting the TV, trying not to think about how the last victim was just a year older than me. That's when I saw my mom walk out of the bathroom. Her face was covered in this shiny red mask. The color was so intense it looked like she'd smeared fresh blood across her skin. In the dim light, it glistened unnervingly, and I swear for a second I thought I was staring at a monster. "Jesus, Mom," I muttered, pressing a hand to my chest. "You scared me." She smiled, the mask cracking just slightly at her lips. "Beauty is pain, sweetheart. One day you'll understand." "What even is that?" I asked. "My own recipe," she said smoothly, brushing past me toward the kitchen. "Don't get ideas. It's not for you." I rolled my eyes. She always guarded that jar like it was gold. I figured it was some weird mixture of strawberries, clay, and God knows what else. Still, something about it unsettled me that night. The following week, Dad picked us up for our weekend at his place. His apartment was cramped, with mismatched furniture and a permanent smell of cigarette smoke. We got into one of our usual fights. He hated how much time I spent on my phone. I hated how he acted like my opinion didn't matter. By Saturday night, I was furious, pacing his living room, itching to leave. Sunday morning, I told him I wanted to go home early. Ethan stayed behind, happy to soak up the attention, so Dad reluctantly handed me the keys to his old sedan and told me to drive careful. By the time I pulled into our driveway, it was still daylight. The house looked quiet. Too quiet. Mom's car was in the garage. I let myself in with my key, dumped my bag on the couch, and was about to head upstairs when I froze. From the basement came a sound. Muffled voices. A whimper. Then a sharp cry cut off suddenly. My blood turned cold. Slowly, I crept toward the basement door, each step heavier than the last. My hand trembled as I pushed it open. The stairs creaked beneath me as I descended, and what I saw at the bottom will haunt me forever. A young girl, no older than 15, was strapped to a metal table. Her neck had been cut, though not deep enough to kill her yet, and blood was dripping steadily into a row of glass jars. A hand, my mother's hand, was pressed over the girl's mouth to stifle her cries. And Mom was leaning over her with a scalpel, carefully prying at the girl's eyes. I choked on a scream, stumbling back. My whole body wanted to collapse. My mom, the woman who packed my lunches, who brushed my hair before school, was torturing someone like it was just another household chore. Her head snapped toward me, her mask-free face splattered with blood. "Lena," she hissed, "go upstairs." I ran. That night, I locked myself in my room and cried until I was sick. My brain scrambled for explanations. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I'd fallen asleep on the couch and dreamed it. The next morning, I forced myself to check. The basement was spotless. No blood, no girl, no table. Just the faint chemical scent of bleach. But on the bathroom counter upstairs sat the jar of her mask, fuller than it had been before. When I opened the lid and sniffed, I nearly gagged. Underneath the artificial sweetness of strawberries was the undeniable metallic stench of blood. For days, I couldn't look at her the same. Every smile seemed hollow. Every "I love you" felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I started noticing patterns too. All the murders happened on weekends when Ethan and I were away at Dad's. She had the house to herself. The timelines matched too perfectly. One afternoon, while she was at work, I searched the house, my hands shaking as I pulled open drawers and cabinets. In the crawl space behind the laundry room, I found a shoebox. Inside were jars, dozens of them, each one filled with preserved human eyes. I collapsed to my knees, sobbing silently into my hands. There was no denying it now. My mom wasn't just part of the Stitcher murders. She was the Stitcher. The hardest part was Ethan. He adored her, and I couldn't rip his world apart without proof strong enough to make the police listen. For 2 nights I didn't sleep, just replayed everything in my head, trying to decide what to do. In the end, I knew I couldn't let her keep killing, even if it meant betraying my own blood. The following Thursday, I ground up a handful of Dad's leftover diazepam pills. When Mom asked for juice, I stirred the powder into her glass, my hands slick with sweat. She took a long drink, smirking at me over the rim. "You're quiet tonight, Lena," she said. I forced a smile. "Just tired." Minutes later, her eyes drooped. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "Mom?" Ethan asked, confused as she slumped against the counter. "Help me," I whispered hoarsely, dragging him into the living room. Together, we tied her wrists and ankles with zip ties, strapping her to a chair while she mumbled incoherently. I dialed 911, my voice trembling as I told the dispatcher everything: our address, her crimes, the jars in the crawl space. The longest 15 minutes of my life passed as we sat there, listening to her breathing grow heavier, her head lolling to the side. When the police finally burst in, I felt both relief and heartbreak. Ethan clung to me, crying as they led our mom, our mother, in handcuffs through the front door. The headlines the next day confirmed it. The Stitcher killer captured, suspect identified as local mother. The mugshot was of the woman who once tucked me into bed. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, all I felt was hollow. Sometimes, late at night, I stare at the bathroom vanity where her mask jar used to sit, and I wonder if I'll ever stop seeing her with that blood-red face, smiling at me like nothing was wrong. I wonder if, deep down, some part of her cruelty runs in my veins too. Because every time I look in the mirror now, I swear I see her reflection staring back. I always thought my childhood was unusual, but I didn't have the words to explain why until much later. People always said my mom, Angela Pierce, was beautiful, well-dressed, friendly, and charming in front of anyone who mattered. We lived in a modest 2-story house in Redwood, Ohio, where my mom worked part-time at a department store and spent the rest of her time making sure everything looked perfect. Perfect house, perfect meals, perfect family. At least that's what she wanted people to see. What no one saw was how quickly that perfect smile twisted when the door shut. The first time I realized she wasn't like other moms, I was about 6. She had taken me shopping at Kroger, and I begged for a box of animal crackers. I remember holding the box so tightly, telling her, "Please, Mom, just this one. Please?" She hissed at me in the aisle, her eyes sharp like a knife. "Don't you dare embarrass me." But I did anyway. I started to cry when she put the box back. People stared. She ended up buying it, but when we got home, she made me kneel in the kitchen. She said in a calm, icy voice, You will never make me look weak again." Then she grabbed my wrist and twisted it until I screamed. She smashed the box on the floor and forced me to eat the cookies that had scattered on the tiles. That was the first time I understood her anger didn't stop once we left the public eye. Now I'm 20 and things haven't changed much. That night it started with her voice echoing through the house like a cold gust of wind. "Emily, get down here." My chest tightened instantly. I ran through my mind like a checklist. Dishes done, laundry, folded, living room, cleaned yesterday. I couldn't think of anything she could scold me for. My feet dragged down the stairs anyway, my heart thumping like it always did when she called me. She was in the living room, standing in front of the TV with her arms crossed. The glow of the screen lit her face in a strange, sharp way. Her eyes locked on me. "Come here," she ordered. I stepped closer, trying to keep my face neutral. "Check the TV." I frowned but obeyed. I dragged my finger across the bottom edge of the screen. When I held it up, there was the faintest streak of dust. My stomach sank. Her jaw clenched. "Why is this filthy?" "Mom, I wiped it 2 days ago. It must have..." The slap came so fast I didn't even see her hand move. My head snapped sideways, and a hot sting spread across my cheek. Tears rushed to my eyes, but I bit them back, pressing my lips together. She hated when I cried. She grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked my face up close to hers. I could smell her perfume, mixed with the bitter tang of wine on her breath. "You're useless," she spat. "I should have known from the day you were born. If you can't even keep a damn TV clean, what good are you? My guests are coming tonight and you'll embarrass me like this?" "I'll clean it again," I whispered. "Not just the TV. Everything. Do it before I regret ever having you." She shoved me backward so hard I stumbled into the wall, catching myself just before my shoulder hit the corner. She stormed upstairs, muttering about how I ruined everything. My hands shook as I grabbed the cleaning spray and rag. I scrubbed the TV, then the tables, then the baseboards, moving mechanically, trying to erase every speck of dirt before she could find it. When I finally finished, I slipped into the kitchen to check the food she'd prepared earlier. The pot roast was still warm. Relief flooded me. At least she wouldn't scream about that. I pulled a bag of frozen peas from the freezer and pressed it to my cheek. The coolness dulled the ache. Only in my room, behind a locked door, surrounded by my mismatched books and secondhand furniture, did I finally let the tears spill. I thought about the years before, the basement, the punishments, the way she isolated me from everyone. No friends, no parties, no normal teenage life. Every time someone from school tried to talk to me, she'd find out and make sure it ended. She always said, "You're mine, Emily. No one else's." A sharp ring at the doorbell snapped me back. Guests. I wiped my face, stuffed the peas back into the freezer, and hurried upstairs. From the hallway, I listened as my mom's voice transformed into something sugary and warm. She greeted 3 colleagues, 2 women and 1 man. They sat at the dining table, their laughter floating up the stairs like it belonged to a different world entirely. Then came the moment that nearly unraveled everything. "Is your face swollen?" the man asked suddenly. I froze in the doorway. They were all staring at me. My mom's hand gripped her knife so tightly her knuckles whitened. I swallowed hard. "No. I fell from my bed and hit my face." A tense silence. Then, my mom laughed lightly. "She's so clumsy, always tripping over herself." The others chuckled awkwardly. She shot me a look that burned into my skin. "Go upstairs, Emily," she said sweetly. I obeyed. But upstairs, my legs wouldn't stop pacing. My chest felt like it was caving in. I thought about running. Again. But the thought of surviving on my own terrified me, almost as much as staying. A knock at my door. I jumped. The door creaked open, and my mom leaned her head in, smiling that fake smile. "You wanted to tell them, didn't you?" Her voice dropped into a hiss. "You think anyone will believe you? I'll make sure your face swells so bad you won't even see straight." She locked the door behind her as she left. My breath quickened. The last time she said something like that, I ended up with broken ribs. I couldn't wait. I grabbed the small stash of money I'd hidden in a sock drawer. $47, all I had saved. I shoved it into my jeans and rushed to the window. I'd rehearsed this in my head dozens of times. I pried it open, swung my legs over the ledge, gripped the drain pipe, and lowered myself down. My palms burned as I slid, and when I jumped the last few feet, pain shot up my ankles. I froze, heart pounding, scanning the dark yard. That's when I saw him. The same man from the dinner table, standing near his car. He must have come back for something. He looked startled, then concerned. "Emily," he said softly, "what are you doing?" I opened my mouth, ready to lie, but my words tangled. I just... The front door opened. My mom's silhouette appeared, knife gleaming faintly in her hand. "Angela," the man called. "I think Emily was just..." Before he finished, she lunged. The blade plunged into his side. I screamed, a sound I didn't even recognize as my own. He staggered backward, clutching his stomach. I ran. My legs carried me down the street, tears blurring my vision. A couple walking their dog stopped me. "What happened?" they asked. I sobbed the words out. "My mom, she stabbed him." They called 911 as I collapsed on the curb. The police arrived within minutes. They stormed into the house and dragged my mother out, still screaming that I had ruined her life. Miraculously, the man survived. He would need surgery, but the doctors said he'd recover. When the trial came, I sat in the courtroom shaking. She glared at me from across the room, her eyes filled with pure hate. I told the truth anyway. For the first time in my life, I spoke without fear. The jury found her guilty. The last image I have of her is being led away in handcuffs, still cursing my name. Now, the house belongs to me. But I don't walk around bragging about freedom or smiling at the walls. Sometimes at night I still hear her voice, sharp as glass, calling me from the bottom of the stairs. But she's gone, and I'm still here. Finally, I'm free. I always told myself that my daughter would have the life I was denied. When I was 16, standing in front of a cracked mirror inside my childhood bedroom in Rochester, New York, I used to imagine runway lights on my face. I would clip towels around my shoulders, pin old sheets to my body, and pretend they were designer gowns. I saw myself strutting down New York Fashion Week, cameras flashing, people whispering my name. But my parents didn't believe in dreams. My father worked at a manufacturing plant, hands always calloused, voice always impatient. My mother worked as a cashier and told me over and over, "Pretty faces don't pay bills, Marion." That was the end of it. I wasn't allowed to go to modeling school. I wasn't even allowed to try out for the school fashion showcase. Instead, I graduated, got married too young, and by the time I was 23, I had Clarissa. My beautiful Clarissa. From the moment she opened her blue eyes, I knew she would be the one to fulfill everything I couldn't. I'd already failed myself, but I would not let her fail. Not ever. When she was 9, I enrolled her in Hartwell Academy of Modeling, a small but strict school in Buffalo. We drove 3 hours every weekend just so she could learn posture, runway confidence, and the right kind of smile. I spent money I didn't have, taking on double shifts at the diner, but it didn't matter. My baby deserved the spotlight. By the time she was 15, Clarissa had already walked small local shows. Everyone said she had the look. Perfectly symmetrical face, long legs, that effortless kind of grace people kill for. But they didn't know. She didn't just have it. I made her have it. I drilled her on posture until her back ached. I made her practice her expressions in the mirror until she cried. Every time she faltered, I reminded her, "You're not like those other girls, Clarissa. You're mine. You're perfect. And you will win." She hated when I said things like that. She wanted to be normal. She wanted to go to the movies with her friends or join theater club. I told her no. Dreams required sacrifice. And then came the Harrow and Finch audition. It was one of the biggest clothing companies in the state, known for launching teenage girls into national campaigns. If Clarissa got the lead, she would be on every billboard from Boston to Chicago. The tryouts were held in an enormous convention center in downtown Buffalo. Hundreds of girls lined up with their mothers, all painted smiles and fake confidence. I hated every single one of them. Clarissa sat next to me, her face pale with nerves. She was 16 now, blossomed into her prime. I leaned in, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "You'll be perfect," I whispered. "Mom, what if I mess up?" she asked softly. "You won't. You can't. You know why?" She gave me a reluctant glance. "Why?" "Because I didn't raise you to lose." When it was her turn, she walked that runway with grace so flawless it brought tears to my eyes. She was mine, my creation. Every step she took was a step I had forced into perfection. But when the results came in, they didn't call her name. Instead, they chose some brunette girl named Elena Marlowe. She was thin, bubbly, with a smile that made the judges swoon. I felt bile rise in my throat as I watched her mother hug her. Clarissa's shoulders slumped, her lip trembling. I couldn't let that stand. That night, as the room cleared, I slipped a small white pill into a water bottle. I had been carrying those pills for years, emergency measures, the kind that made people very sick, sometimes fatally so. I'd tested it once when Clarissa was 9 during another local competition. A little girl had suddenly collapsed after drinking juice I had offered. She survived, but she never walked another runway. Clarissa had won. This time, I was prepared to go further. I walked over to Elena, smiled sweetly, and pressed the water bottle into her hand. "Congratulations, dear. Clarissa can't wait to work alongside you." She beamed. "Thank you so much. Your daughter's amazing." Her words were like acid in my ears. That night, Elena ended up in the hospital. By morning, she was dead. And just like that, Clarissa was promoted to the lead model. She didn't smile when she heard the news. She looked pale, horrified even. "Mom, that's awful." She was my friend. I cupped her face in my hands. "Baby, don't waste your tears. This is your moment. Trust me. Everything I do for you." But she didn't meet my eyes. The photo shoot went perfectly. Clarissa looked like she belonged on the cover of Vogue. I watched every flicker of the camera and felt pride swell inside me. Afterward, I went to the director's office to thank her for the opportunity. I overheard her talking with another executive through the cracked door. "Yes, Clarissa is stunning, but we think we'll pair her with someone else," the director said. "2 lead faces. It'll give more versatility." My jaw tightened. Another girl? Another thief? Number not again. When I entered, the director, Ms. Holloway, smiled politely. "Mrs. Pierce, your daughter did wonderfully." "That's because she's the only one who deserves it," I said, voice steady. "We're considering a shared spotlight with another model," she explained. I spotted the silver letter opener on her desk. It gleamed under the lamp. I stood, walked slowly toward her. "I'm afraid I can't allow that." Her brows furrowed. "Excuse me?" I picked up the opener, testing its weight. "You people think you can toy with her future. My daughter is the star, not anyone else." "Mrs. Pierce, I pressed my hand over her mouth and slashed her throat in one clean motion. The blood came hot, spraying across my hands, staining my blouse. Her body convulsed, her nails scraping weakly at my wrists before she collapsed against the chair, eyes wide in horror. For the first time, I felt powerful. I felt alive. The door creaked open. "Mom?" Clarissa stood in the doorway, her face white as chalk, her hands trembling. She saw everything, the blood, the corpse, the weapon in my hand. "Clarissa," I whispered, forcing a smile. "It's okay, baby, it's all for you." Her lips quivered. What? What did you do?" "She was going to ruin your career. I fixed it. Don't you see? I always fix it." her eyes filled with tears. "Mom, you're a monster." The word cut deeper than any blade. Monster. I stepped toward her, desperate, reaching out. No, don't say that. I did this for you, for us. No one else will ever understand, but you will." She shook her head, backing away. "Stay away from me." I lunged forward, grabbing her wrist. "We can leave. We'll start over, just you and me. You don't need anyone else." She yanked away, screaming, "Help! Somebody help!" Her voice echoed down the hall. I chased her, heels clicking violently on the polished floor. The other models and mothers turned, gasping as they saw me. Blood smeared on my arms, the letter opener still clutched tight. I tackled her to the ground, pinning her wrists. "Ungrateful girl," I screamed. "Everything I did for you, and this is how you repay me?" "Get off me," she sobbed, her eyes filled with terror. "I don't want this. I don't want you." The words shattered me. Before I could raise the blade, strong arms wrenched me back. Security guards, mothers, strangers, all pulling me away. Clarissa crawled back, shaking, eyes locked on me like I was the devil himself. I screamed as they dragged me down, my vision blurred with tears. "Clarissa, baby, don't leave me. I'll fix this, I promise." She didn't answer. She just wept into her hands. I was arrested that night. They said I was delusional, dangerous. They put me in a psychiatric facility upstate, locked behind white walls and barred windows. The doctors say I'm unstable. They want me to talk about why I did it. But I don't need to explain. Clarissa knows. She'll understand one day. She has to. I rock myself to sleep at night, whispering her name. Clarissa, my perfect girl. It's only a matter of time before they slip. A door left unlocked. A guard too distracted. I'll break out. And when I do, I'll find my baby again. Because no one will ever love her the way I do. No one. I never thought love would make me blind. Looking back now, I should have seen the warning signs. The little moments where things didn't quite add up. The ways I ignored my gut because I was so caught up in the idea of having finally found someone who made me feel safe. His name was Joseph Myers, and I met him during my sophomore year at Riverton University. He was a nutrition science major, and I first noticed him in the campus library, sitting at one of the long wooden tables, surrounded by neatly stacked textbooks and scribbled notes. I remember thinking he looked like someone who had it all figured out. Calm, focused, quietly handsome in a way that drew me in without him even noticing. The first time we actually spoke was almost laughably mundane. I had accidentally left my highlighter on the desk after rushing off for class, and when I came back later, Joseph was sitting in the same spot, holding it up with a small smile. "You left this," he said simply, his voice warm, steady. "Thanks," I'd replied, tucking a strand of hair nervously behind my ear. That little exchange led to coffee, then study sessions, and within months, to long evening walks across campus. I found myself opening up to him in ways I hadn't with anyone else, telling him about my messed up childhood, about my struggles with anxiety, about the way I sometimes felt like I was always just a step behind everyone else. He never judged, never interrupted, just listened. He made me feel like I was enough. By the time we hit 6 months of dating, I'd moved into his off-campus apartment. It felt fast, but Joseph had this way of making things feel inevitable, natural. Living with him was easy. He cooked most nights, he was disciplined about his routines, and he was endlessly patient with me when I got in my head about little things. If I was ever insecure about my grades or my appearance, he'd just smile and say, "Maddie, you're more than fine. You're perfect." And then one evening after dinner, he looked at me with a kind of nervous excitement I hadn't seen in him before. "My mom's been asking about you," he said. "She wants to meet you. I was thinking maybe we could drive down this weekend." I froze a little. Parents had always been a sore spot for me. My own mother and I barely spoke, and when we did, it usually ended in passive-aggressive remarks about my life choices. Meeting Joseph's mother felt intimidating. But he seemed so close to her. She called him at least 3 times a week, and their conversations, from what I overheard, seemed harmless enough. Just the usual. "Are you eating well? How's school? Don't overwork yourself." "Of course," I said, trying to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. "Good," he replied with a grin. "You'll love her. You two are a lot alike." That Saturday, Joseph and I loaded up his old Honda and drove out of the city. As the buildings gave way to fields, my stomach churned with nerves. "Is it weird that I'm nervous?" I asked, fiddling with the bracelet on my wrist. "Not at all," Joseph said, "but you don't have to be. My mom's great. She just really cares about first impressions." "Great," I muttered, half joking. "No pressure." The highway narrowed into winding back roads lined with thick trees. The deeper we drove, the more isolated it felt. Finally, after almost 2 hours, Joseph pulled up to a sprawling, weather-beaten farmhouse. Its white paint was peeling and the porch sagged slightly in the middle, but the place had a kind of old, stubborn charm. Joseph parked and turned to me, suddenly serious. "Just be open, okay? She can come off a little strong, but once she likes you, she really likes you." Before I could respond, the front door creaked open and a woman stepped out onto the porch. Angela Myers was nothing like I expected. She was short, round, with graying hair tied back in a bun and soft, rosy cheeks. She wore a floral apron over her dress, and when she saw Joseph, her face lit up like he'd just come home from war. "My baby," she cried, waddling down the steps to throw her arms around him. Then she turned to me, her smile stretching even wider. "And this must be Madison." "Yes, ma'am," I said politely, offering my hand. But instead of shaking it, she pulled me into a hug that nearly knocked the air out of me. "Call me Mama," she whispered in my ear. I froze. I didn't even call my mother Mama, but Angela held on to me so tightly, rocking me slightly like a child. Okay, Mama," I said, forcing a smile. Her eyes glittered as if I'd passed some unspoken test. "Oh, we're going to get along so well." Angela gave me a tour of the house while Joseph carried our bags upstairs. The place was old but well kept, filled with antique furniture and the faint scent of lemon polish. "This is Joseph's old room," she said, showing me the space where faded sports trophies lined the shelves. "And this is the dining room. I've made a special dinner for you tonight." When we finally sat down, the table was groaning under the weight of food. Roast chicken, lasagna, cornbread, mashed potatoes. Everything smelled rich and heavy. "Wow, Mama, this looks amazing," Joseph said. I, however, felt a knot twist in my stomach. Every dish seemed to have meat. The mashed potatoes had bacon bits. The cornbread was speckled with pork. Joseph knew I was vegetarian. I thought for sure he'd told her. Angela began scooping huge portions onto my plate. "Eat up, sweetheart," she said. Mama," Joseph interjected gently. "Remember? Madison's vegetarian." Angela's smile faltered for just a second, her eyes snapping to mine. "Oh, I know, honey." The way she said it sent a chill up my spine. I pushed the food around on my plate, embarrassed. "I'm really sorry, Mama, I can't eat meat. It makes me sick." For a moment, silence stretched across the table. Then Angela stood, walked slowly behind me, and before I knew what was happening, she slammed my face into the plate. Hot gravy smeared across my cheeks, bits of chicken and potato clogging my nose and mouth. I couldn't breathe. I heard Joseph shout, "Mom, stop!" But her grip was like iron. I went limp, sliding out of my chair and gasping for air. Food dripped from my face and shirt. Angela stepped back, perfectly calm again. "There, now you've tried it." I stood shaking, humiliated, bile rising in my throat. Joseph touched my shoulder. "Let me help you clean up," he whispered, then turned to her. "Mama, can I be excused?" Her tone was cheerful. "No, you may not." "Okay," he said, sitting back down. That was the moment I realized something was terribly, terribly wrong. Later that night, I woke to something wet pressed against my lips. My eyes flew open, and there was Angela, looming over me, spooning gravy into my mouth. "Midnight snack," she cooed. I gagged, spitting it back in her face. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I screamed. Joseph stirred awake, groggy. He saw the mess, the gravy dripping from my chin, the spoon in his mother's hand, and then he looked at me with a softness that shattered me. "It's okay," he whispered. "Just let her feed you a little. Then you can sleep. Mama knows best." I stared at him in disbelief. Betrayal burned through my chest. I didn't even think. I grabbed his car keys off the dresser, shoved past Angela, and bolted. Barefoot, still wearing gravy-soaked clothes, I sped down the country road until the farmhouse disappeared into the darkness behind me. That was 3 weeks ago. Joseph has called me dozens of times since, but I haven't answered. I can't. Every time his name flashes on my phone, I taste gravy again, feel his mother's hand forcing my face down. I thought Joseph was the love of my life. Now I don't know if I ever really knew him at all. Because when he said Mama knows best, he meant it, and he believed it. I never thought my childhood would leave me with memories that feel less like a past and more like recurring nightmares. Looking back now as an adult, I realize so many things I ignored or brushed off as a child weren't normal at all. At the time, though, I didn't have the words to explain it, nor the courage to say anything. My name is Adrian, and I grew up in a small town outside Flagstaff, Arizona. We lived in a quiet neighborhood with pine trees at the back of the house and a long gravel driveway that crunched beneath the tires every time my stepdad came home from work. Most kids my age had moms who were protective, maybe overbearing at times, but my mom, was something else entirely. She was beautiful, striking even, the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a grocery store. But behind closed doors, she was unpredictable, obsessive, and deeply controlling. From as early as I can remember, she demanded perfection, not just in my grades or my chores, but in my very existence. When I was 9 years old, she told me something that still rings in my ears. "You're not allowed to embarrass me, ever." At 9, I didn't fully understand what that meant, but I learned quickly. My dad left when I was 2. I don't remember him at all. Mom remarried when I was 6, to a man named Richard, who worked as a property inspector. He was quiet, hardly ever spoke unless Mom was in the room, and when he did, it was always something like, "Listen to your mother, Adrian." I used to think he was just reserved, but later I realized he was scared of her too. Mom had routines, strict ones. Dinner was at exactly 6:30, no exceptions. I wasn't allowed to get up from the table until she excused me. If I tried to sneak food, even something small like a cookie, she would notice. Always. The worst part wasn't even her anger, it was her silence. She could ignore me for days, move around me like I was invisible, until I apologized for things I didn't even do. The year was 2020. That summer, after months of being cooped up in the house during the pandemic, Mom decided we needed a family outing. She always spoke in these exaggerated tones when she wanted control. "We need this. It will bring us closer together." So, we packed up and drove out of town. She said we were going somewhere educational for me. Something that will shape your mind, in her words. I didn't argue. Arguing wasn't allowed. The drive was long, nearly 3 hours. I fell asleep in the back seat with my head against the window. I woke up when Mom's hand reached back suddenly and shook my knee. "Wake up," she said, smiling too wide. "We're here. Look outside." I blinked against the sunlight and saw a wide stretch of desert, flat, dry land with sandstone ridges in the distance. I thought Arizona was already desert, but this was different, almost lifeless. I asked, "Why are we here?" She turned her head slightly and said, "Because, Adrian, You need to learn to pay attention to history. We're going to see fossilized dinosaur tracks." My stomach knotted, though I didn't know why. Maybe it was the way she said it, like it wasn't really about fossils at all. It was about me proving myself to her. The trail led us to a narrow stretch that Mom called a sand bridge. It wasn't actually sand. It was hardened sandstone, carved by wind and time. Still, it looked fragile. The bridge was about 20 feet high with steep drop-offs on either side. Richard walked ahead carrying a backpack with water bottles. My mom walked behind him, holding her sun hat tightly as the wind pushed at it. I walked just a few steps behind them. Then, her voice cut the air. "Stay close, Adrian. Don't lag. You're not a child anymore." I muttered, "I'm only 9. She stopped walking and turned. Her eyes narrowed. "What was that?" "Nothing," I whispered. "Good, because 9 is old enough to know better." She gave a thin smile and continued walking. I slowed down anyway, letting my eyes wander to the desert below. That's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was just a shadow cast by the ridges. But as my eyes adjusted, I realized it was moving, slow, deliberate steps. A figure. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, its skin so pale it looked bleached against the sand. Its back was hunched, the spine pressing sharply against its flesh as though it hadn't eaten in years. Its arms were long, nearly dragging against the ground, ending in thin, claw-like fingers. Its legs bent strangely, part human, part animal. It walked with a rhythm, swinging its arms opposite its legs like a human but slower. Almost entranced, like it was following something only it could sense. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. "Mom," I whispered, though my voice didn't carry. I wanted to scream, but fear strangled me. My family was already farther ahead, nearing the end of the bridge. The creature never looked at me, never looked at them either. It just kept moving, step after step, toward some unseen destination. My heart pounded. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but it didn't vanish. It was real. I finally turned and ran to catch up with my mom and Richard. The rest of the hike was a blur. My mom pointed out fossil tracks, lecturing me on how ancient creatures left them, how important it was to respect the past. But I couldn't focus. My mind replayed the image over and over. The pale skin, the hunched back, the long arms. At one point, she stopped and looked at me. "Why aren't you paying attention, Adrian? You love science." I just don't feel good," I muttered. Her face hardened. "Don't start this. Not today. Do you know how much effort I put into planning this? How much money?" Richard tried to step in gently. Maybe he's just tired. But Mom's eyes shot him a warning glare, and he fell silent. The car ride home was filled with her lectures about responsibility, gratitude, and how I embarrassed her by acting uninterested. I said nothing. For weeks after that trip, I had nightmares, not about the desert or the fossils, but about the creature. I'd wake up sweating, convinced it was outside my window, walking slowly toward the house. I never told Mom what I saw. She wouldn't have believed me. She would have called me dramatic, ungrateful, maybe even punished me for making up stories. As I got older, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a trick of the sun or an animal I'd never seen before. Maybe my 9-year-old brain invented it. But deep down, I know what I saw. It was real. And the part that unsettles me most isn't that it existed. It's that it didn't notice us at all. Whatever it was, it had a purpose, a destination. Something out there in the desert was calling it. And for reasons I can't explain, I sometimes wonder if one day it will be calling me too. Now, years later, I live far away from my mom. I've learned to recognize her behavior for what it was: emotional control, manipulation, a toxic cycle I was lucky to escape. But the trip remains etched in my memory. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about that thing I saw, the one no one else noticed. Maybe it was a desert spirit, a creature of folklore, maybe it was a or something science hasn't explained yet. Or maybe, just maybe, it was drawn to families like mine, broken, fractured, hiding secrets. And sometimes when I dream, I still see it walking, slowly, quietly, one step at a time, not looking at me. Not yet. But I know someday it will. I never really thought much about how fragile a family could feel until the night everything in my house changed. My name is Daniel Ruiz, and I live in a mid-sized town in Bakersfield, California. I'm 22 now, but this story happened a little over a year ago, when I had just moved back into my parents' house after college didn't work out. Growing up, my mom, Teresa, was always the type of mother people admired. Put together, well-dressed, constantly smiling at church gatherings and fiercely protective of me and my younger sister, Marissa. But behind closed doors, she was unpredictable. My dad, Julio, often walked on eggshells around her. Some nights they laughed like best friends, and other nights I heard muffled shouting through my bedroom walls. When I was younger, I brushed it off as normal parents fighting. But the older I got, the more I noticed the small fractures in her behavior, things that didn't quite add up. She'd have sudden mood swings, laugh when no one said anything funny, and once, when I was about 15, she screamed at Marissa for spilling orange juice and didn't stop yelling for nearly an hour. My sister sobbed quietly while Mom's face twisted into something unrecognizable. Then the next morning, Mom acted like nothing had happened, cooking us pancakes and humming to herself. Those contradictions became a normal part of life. I guess I learned to live with it until the night I heard her crying when she wasn't. It was late, around 12:30 a.m., and like always, I was sleeping in the living room. My bedroom was upstairs, but ever since I'd come back home, I'd gotten into the habit of laying a mattress out in front of the TV. There was something comforting about falling asleep to background noise. That night, I wasn't tired yet. I had the TV on low, some rerun sitcoms playing, and my phone in my hands as I messaged my girlfriend, Alina. "You're still awake?" she texted. "Yeah, can't sleep. Watching TV," I wrote back. "Don't stay up too late again, Danny. You're going to be cranky tomorrow," she teased. "I know, just 5 more minutes." I smiled at her message, but that's when I heard it. Soft, muffled, and heartbreaking. A woman's voice crying. At first I thought I was imagining it, but then I lowered the TV volume, straining my ears. The crying was clearer now, coming from the direction of my parents' bedroom. My chest tightened. My mom. I froze on my mattress, the phone screen still glowing in my hand. I didn't know what to do. Growing up, my mom wasn't the type of person you could just approach when she was upset. She carried her problems like locked suitcases, heavy but inaccessible. Still, the sound was so raw, so painful, that I texted Alina. "I think my mom is crying." She replied almost instantly. "Go check on her." I hesitated, typing back, "Are you sure? I don't want to bother her." "Danny, if she's crying, something's wrong. Just go." I put my phone down, slid off the mattress, and tiptoed toward the hallway. My parents' bedroom was across from the bathroom, the door slightly ajar. I stopped near the bathroom, just listening. The crying grew sharper, more desperate, almost like someone was pleading. I felt a lump in my throat as I pushed the door open gently. And there she was, my mom, lying on her side, sound asleep. Her chest rose and fell in slow, steady breaths. She even let out a faint snore. But the crying, it stopped the second I looked at her. I backed away slowly, my skin prickling. When I got back to the living room, I sat on the mattress, staring blankly at the TV. My phone buzzed. "Well?" Alina asked. I typed back with shaky fingers. "She's asleep." She wasn't crying. She replied, "Then maybe you were just hearing things." But I wasn't. I knew I wasn't. I had stood there listening for minutes. I knew what I heard. Oddly enough, after that, the sound didn't return. I eventually dozed off with unease settling into my stomach. The next morning at breakfast, I decided to ask her, "Mom," I said, my voice careful. "Were you crying last night?" She froze while slicing bananas for her cereal. "What? Number Y? I swear I heard you crying. It sounded real." Her brow furrowed. She looked genuinely confused. "I was asleep, Daniel. If something was wrong, I'd tell you." Dad glanced up from his coffee, looking between us, but didn't say a word. I pressed again. "So you weren't upset? Nothing happened?" "No," she said firmly. "I don't know what you heard, but it wasn't me." Her tone was final, but her eyes looked unsettled. I tried to push the whole thing out of my mind, but over the next few weeks, strange things began happening in the house. At first it was small, footsteps at night when everyone was asleep, the faint sound of humming that seemed to come from the kitchen even when the lights were off. Then one night, Marissa shook me awake on the living room mattress. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. "Danny." I heard Mom crying in my room. "What do you mean in your room?" I whispered. She was standing by my bed crying, but when I turned on the lamp, nobody was there. My stomach dropped. I didn't know how to respond, but before I could, we both heard it, the same muffled crying again, this time coming from the hallway. I stood up slowly, every muscle tense, and Marissa clutched my arm. We crept toward the sound, hearts pounding, and once again, when we reached Mom's room, she was asleep, peaceful, snoring. But this time something was different. The crying didn't stop right away. It lingered, echoing faintly around us until it faded like smoke. The days that followed were chaos. Mom became more unpredictable. She'd stare at us blankly, then smile like nothing happened. She started locking her bedroom door during the day, claiming she needed privacy. Dad looked more exhausted than ever, but every time I tried to ask, he brushed it off. One night, Alina came over for dinner. Everything seemed normal until halfway through the meal when Mom suddenly dropped her fork, her face twisting into rage. "Stop staring at me like that, Daniel," she screamed. I froze, my fork midair. "Mom, I wasn't. Don't lie to me," she snapped, her voice shaking. "You think I don't know? You think I don't hear you?" The room went silent. Dad stared at his plate. Marissa looked terrified. Alina whispered, "Danny," under her breath. And then, just as quickly as it came, the anger melted off Mom's face. She smiled sweetly, almost mockingly. "I'm fine," she said softly. "Eat your dinner." We all sat there in stunned silence. Things spiraled from there. The crying grew more frequent, sometimes in the middle of the day when she wasn't even home. Marissa started sleeping in the living room with me. Dad spent longer hours at work. The final straw came one night around 3 a.m. I woke to the sound of footsteps in the living room. At first I thought it was Marissa getting water, but when I turned, I saw her curled up next to me, fast asleep. The footsteps were deliberate, circling the mattress. Then, a shadow loomed over me. "Danny," a voice whispered. It was my mom's voice. I shot upright, heart pounding, but no one was there. From the hallway I heard crying again. Louder, more distorted, almost animalistic. I grabbed Marissa, waking her, and we both bolted upstairs to my old room, slamming the door shut. That was the last night I ever slept in the living room. In the morning, we told Dad everything. He finally admitted the truth. "There's something wrong with your mother," he said quietly. She's not the same anymore." I pressed him for answers, but he wouldn't say more. Just that he'd noticed it years ago, long before we did. A week later, Mom was gone. She vanished in the middle of the night, leaving behind her wedding ring and phone on the kitchen counter. The police searched, but there was no trace of her. Sometimes I wonder if she left on her own. Other times, I wonder if whatever we heard, the crying, the footsteps, the voice, wasn't her at all. And if it wasn't, then where did she go? To this day, whenever I sleep in silence, I swear I still hear it sometimes, faint crying in the distance like she never left. I never really understood why my friends at school seemed so free, so easy with their parents. They'd roll their eyes when their moms nagged them, slam their bedroom doors, or even talk back during arguments. To me, that kind of thing was unthinkable. My mother wasn't someone you argued with. She wasn't someone you tested. She wasn't even someone you could ever really understand. I grew up in a small town outside of Madison, Wisconsin. My father was Bosnian, quiet and hardworking, and my mother was American, born and raised here. On the surface, my family looked normal. My mom was a nurse, my dad worked long hours in construction, and I had one younger sister, Emily. If you saw us at the grocery store, you'd never guess anything was off. We looked like a picture-perfect family. But behind closed doors, life was different. My mom wasn't always cruel. That's what made it so hard to recognize the danger until it was too late. She could be warm, funny, even doting. She would bake cookies with Emily, tell me bedtime stories, or sit with us watching Disney movies. But when something switched inside her, when the mask slipped, her eyes would go flat, like two dead ponds, and the person in front of me wouldn't feel like my mom anymore. When I was 11, I started noticing it more clearly. I still remember the first time I felt afraid of her. It was late one night in winter, snow falling outside, and I was supposed to be asleep. I had a little reading light I'd clipped onto my bed, and I was flipping through a Goosebumps book when I heard the creak of her footsteps in the hallway. Quickly, I clicked the light off and shoved the book under my blanket. The door opened. She stepped inside, but she didn't turn on the light. She just stood there in the dark, watching me. "Why are you awake?" Her voice was low, sharp. I'm not," I stammered. "Yes, you are." Her footsteps moved closer. I could smell her perfume mixed with something else, something metallic. She leaned close, her face shadowed but her eyes glowing faintly from the streetlight outside. "You shouldn't lie to me," she whispered. "I always know when you lie." I froze, nodding, unsure what to say. She stayed for a few seconds longer, breathing over me before finally leaving the room. The next morning she was cheerful, humming while she made pancakes as if nothing had happened. I told myself maybe I'd imagined it, that it was just a bad dream. But over the years there were more nights like that. Nights when she'd appear in my room without explanation. Times when I'd wake up to find her just sitting at the edge of my bed, staring. My dad noticed, I'm sure of it, but he never said anything. He worked long hours, and when he came home, he barely had the energy to eat before collapsing into bed. Sometimes I'd catch him watching her with a nervous look, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Once, when I was about 13, I tried telling him. "Dad," I whispered one night after Emily was asleep, "something's wrong with Mom." He looked at me for a long moment, his face pale and exhausted. Then he shook his head. "Don't," he muttered. "Just don't make her angry." And that was it. That was all he said. I realized then that he was afraid of her too. The worst night came when I was 14. It was a Friday evening, and Emily had gone to a friend's house for a sleepover. Dad was working late, so it was just me and Mom. She suggested we have a movie night together. I hesitated but nodded. Maybe if I played along, things would be okay. We started watching a movie, but halfway through she turned it off. She looked at me with that flat, empty stare. "Do you love me?" she asked suddenly. "Yes," I said quickly. "More than your father?" I blinked. "What?" "No, I mean I love you both." Her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, nails digging into my skin. That's not what I asked. Her grip was iron, and my throat went dry. "Yes," I whispered finally, just to make it stop. She smiled then, but it wasn't warm. It was too wide, stretching unnaturally, her teeth clenched together. "Good boy." She let me go and walked into the kitchen. I stayed frozen on the couch, my heart pounding. I thought maybe it was over. But then I heard her whispering. At first I thought she was on the phone, but when I peeked around the corner, I saw her standing alone in the dark kitchen, facing the wall, murmuring to someone who wasn't there. "I told you he loves me," she hissed. "He'll always love me. He's mine." I backed away quietly and locked myself in my room until Dad came home. After that night, things only got worse. She became unpredictable. Some days she'd act completely normal, laughing, cooking, asking about school. Other days, she'd scream for hours at nothing, slamming doors and muttering under her breath. Emily was too young to understand, but I started keeping her away from Mom whenever I could. Once, I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of humming. When I opened my eyes, I saw her standing in the hallway outside my door, holding one of Dad's hammers. "What are you doing?" I asked, my voice trembling. She tilted her head and smiled. "Just making sure no one hurts you." She walked away without another word. One afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. She'd forbidden us from going into the basement, claiming it was too dangerous. But while she was at work, I snuck down there. It was worse than I expected. The air was damp, the light bulb flickering. On the walls, she had taped pieces of paper covered in scribbles. Words, drawings, names, my name, Emily's name, over and over again. In one corner, there was a large butcher knife stuck into a cutting board, the wood stained dark. I felt sick. I ran back upstairs, locked the door, and never went down there again. The night it all came to a head, I was 15. Dad had finally left. Just didn't come home one day. Later, we found out he'd moved out quietly, leaving us behind. I hated him for that, for abandoning us to her. That night, she snapped. She stormed into my room, her eyes wild, her hands shaking. "You told him, didn't you?" she screamed. "You made him leave." "I didn't," I cried. "I swear I didn't." She lunged at me, grabbing my hair, slamming my head against the wall. "Liar, you're trying to take everything from me." I shoved her away with all my strength and ran. She chased me down the hall, her footsteps pounding behind me. I bolted into the kitchen, my hands scrambling for anything to defend myself. I grabbed a can from the pantry, some random can of beans, and hurled it at her. It hit her forehead with a sickening crack. She froze, her eyes wide, blood trickling down her face. "You'll regret that," she whispered. Her voice was calm now, almost soothing. "I'll never leave you. I'll always be here, even when you can't see me." Then she collapsed. The police came. They said it was an accident, that she'd fallen and hit her head. She survived, but something in her changed after that. She wasn't violent anymore, just hollow. They admitted her to a psychiatric facility, and I went to live with my aunt. It's been a year since then. I should feel safe now, but I don't. Some nights, I still hear her voice in my head. I'll always be here. And sometimes, when I pass a dark window, I catch a reflection that isn't mine. A woman's smile, stretched too wide, teeth clenched, eyes flat and dead, watching me, waiting. I never thought I'd question who my mother really was. If you had asked me even a year ago, I would have said she was the one person in my life I never had to doubt. She was steady, predictable, the anchor in a house that had weathered plenty of storms. But I can't stop replaying the night when everything shifted, when I realized the woman living in our house, cooking meals, humming in the kitchen, calling my name, might not have been my mother at all. My name is Adrian Varga, and I grew up in Hallowick, Wisconsin, a small town most people only pass through on their way to Madison. Our house sat near the edge of a wooded lot, the kind of house that looked like it should have been repainted years ago. Green shutters flaked with peeling paint, a front porch that sagged a little in the middle, and a back lawn that bled into the tree line. It had just been Mom, my sister Clara, and me for as long as I could remember. Dad left when I was 6, and I have only scattered memories of him. His aftershave, the sound of a car pulling away at night, Mom filled the void by working double shifts at a nursing home on the far side of town. It was tough, and I know she was tired more often than not, but she kept us afloat. She was strict in some ways. You didn't talk back, you didn't leave chores undone. But she also had moments of tenderness that stuck with me. When I was little and couldn't sleep, she'd sit on the edge of my bed, press a kiss to my forehead, and whisper, "You'll be all right, Addie. You're mine. You'll always be mine." I used to believe those words were unshakable. But then came the winter of 2021. That was when the first knock came. I had just turned 17. My days were simple: school, basketball practice, evenings spent gaming with my best friend, Noah Richter. Clara was away at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, so the house felt emptier. Mom's schedule left me alone most nights. She'd head out at 9:30 p.m. and get home around 8 in the morning. It was a routine I'd lived with for years. That night, I can still feel it. It all seemed too normal. I came home from practice to find dinner waiting on the table. Not just leftovers or a quick casserole, but a full spread, pot roast, roasted carrots, homemade bread still steaming. Mom stood in the kitchen humming softly to herself. It wasn't a song I knew, and it didn't sound like the radio she usually had on. It was something else. Low, lilting, almost like a lullaby. "Smells good," I said, tossing my bag by the stairs. She turned and smiled at me. Her smile seemed wider than usual, and it held steady longer than it should have. "I thought you'd like it, sweetheart. You've been working hard." I glanced at the clock. "Aren't you going to be late for work?" Her smile didn't move. "I've got time." The way she said it made me pause. Normally, she was a stickler for her schedule. That was the first moment. Small, easy to brush off. But it stuck in the back of my mind. We ate together, which almost never happened on a weeknight. She asked me about school, about Noah, about whether I'd thought about colleges. Nothing wrong with that, except her tone was off. Softer, slower, like she'd practiced the questions beforehand. I chalked it up to her being tired, but as I went to bed that night, I couldn't shake the way her smile had held too long. It was just past 2 a.m. when I woke to the sound of knocking. 3 soft taps at the front door. I lay still at first, half asleep, thinking maybe it was a dream. But then came the voice. "Addie? Honey, open up, it's Mom." My eyes snapped open. My heart thudded against my ribs. I had just eaten dinner with her. I had watched her leave for work at 9:30. So who the hell was at the door? I slipped quietly out of bed and crept to the landing that overlooked the living room. The only light came from the street lamp bleeding through the blinds. Knock, knock, knock. "Sweetheart, it's cold out here, let me in." Every hair on my arms stood on end. I whispered to myself, "She's at work. She's at work. She's at work." But the voice, God, the voice was hers, exactly hers, the same pitch, the same tired warmth. I thought about calling Noah, but instead I grabbed my phone and texted Clara. Someone at the door saying it's Mom. She's working. Freaking out, Oran. No reply. The knocking grew slower, almost patient. Then the voice changed tone, softer, coaxing. "Don't you trust me, Addie? I'm your mother." I backed up the stairs, shut my bedroom door, and pressed my ear against it. The knocks went on for over an hour before fading away around 3:30 a.m. When morning came, I convinced myself it was a dream. Until Mom came home. She walked in at 8:15, her scrubs wrinkled, her hair tied back. She looked exhausted, like she always did after a long night. But her smile was too wide, too steady. "Morning, sweetheart," she said. "Sleep all right?" I forced a laugh. "Yeah. Hey, did you come home last night? Like around 2? Her expression didn't flicker. "Of course not. Why would I do that?" Then she hugged me, too tightly. Her chin rested on my shoulder, and I swear I felt her chest rise and fall slowly, like she was smelling me, memorizing me. "Addie, she whispered. "You know I'd never leave you, right?" I muttered, "Yeah, I know." But inside, something shifted. It happened again the next night, and the one after, always between 2 and 4 a.m., always her voice. Sometimes the knocks were soft. Sometimes they rattled the frame. Sometimes she hummed the same lullaby I'd heard her singing in the kitchen. One night I saw it, her shadow under the door. Long, too long, stretching across the floorboards. But no footsteps on the porch, no sound of approaching. And during the day, Mom was changing. She made meals I never asked for. She hummed lullabies I didn't know. She asked me questions she should have known the answers to, like what grade I was in or Noah's last name. I started testing her. At dinner one night I asked, "Hey Mom, what did I say to you on my last birthday?" She smiled instantly. Her eyes brightened. "You told me you were grateful for me, that you couldn't have made it this far without me." It was perfect. Too perfect. Exactly the kind of thing I would want to have said, but hadn't. On my 17th birthday, I'd barely looked up from my phone. I didn't sleep that night. I finally told Noah. Not everything. I didn't want to sound insane. But enough. "Dude, weird stuff's been happening," I said as he set his bag down for a sleepover. "If you hear knocking tonight, don't open the door, just don't." He smirked. "You've been binging too much creepy pasta, man." Around 2:20 a.m. it came. 3 soft knocks. We both froze. Then her voice. "Addie? It's Mom. Please let me in." Noah's smirk vanished. His face went pale. "Bro, that's her." I whispered. "She's already upstairs. She's sleeping." We crept to the stairs. The silhouette was there under the door. Not just a shadow, a shape, impossibly still, impossibly stretched. Noah's voice shook. "Man, call the cops." But what would I say? My mom's doppelganger is knocking on the door at 2 a.m. Instead, I shouted, "What did I get you for Christmas 2 years ago?" The voice outside didn't hesitate. "You got me a sweater. Green with little stars. I wore it every day until it ripped." I felt my stomach drop. That wasn't true. Inside, Noah grabbed my arm, whispering, "We're not safe, man." And for the first time, I believed him. Noah left the next morning pale and shaken. He didn't even joke about it the way I thought he would. Before he went, he muttered, "Dude, whatever that was, don't open the door. Ever." I wanted to believe it was over, that it was just some freak thing we both misheard. But that night, Mom acted strange again. She made soup from scratch, chicken noodle my favorite, except I hadn't told her that in years. She hummed the lullaby again, that same tune that had been outside the door. And when I asked her something I thought would trip her up, "What color was Dad's car?" she answered without blinking. "Blue," she said. "The Ford with the dented bumper. You used to trace it with your finger when you were small." I froze. That was right, too right. She said it smoothly, like she wasn't remembering but reciting. That night, I locked my door, but around 2:10 a.m., the knocking started again. "Addie?" The voice whispered, almost sing-song. "It's me. Open the door." I pressed my pillow to my ears, shaking. The next morning, I came downstairs to find Mom already in the kitchen. She turned with that same steady smile. "Morning, sweetheart," she said. But I noticed something. For the first time, I paid attention to her feet. The sunlight spilled across the tile, and everything in the kitchen cast shadows. The chairs, the table, even the salt shaker. Except her. She didn't cast one at all. I tried to act normal. That's what the broadcast later said you should do if they're already inside. Pretend everything is normal. So I sat at the table. She poured me orange juice. Her smile didn't falter once. "Clara's been calling," she said lightly. "You should answer her soon." I knew Clara hadn't called. I checked my phone under the table. No missed calls. I wanted to scream, to run, to do anything, but I couldn't. I just nodded, pretending I believed her. That whole day I watched her move around the house. She folded laundry, she vacuumed, she even sat on the couch and flipped through one of Mom's old magazines, turning the pages too slowly, like she was mimicking what a person might do. And then, around dusk, she came into my room. She sat on the edge of the bed, just like my real mom used to when I was little. "Addie," she whispered, "you'll be all right. You're mine. You'll always be mine." The words were the same, but the way she said them wasn't. They weren't comfort. They were a promise. That night I couldn't hold it in anymore. At dinner I asked her, "What did I say to you on my last birthday?" Her smile widened, too perfect. "You told me you were grateful for me, that you couldn't have made it this far without me." The same answer as before. Smooth, exact, programmed. I felt tears sting my eyes. Because the truth hit me in that moment. The real mom never would have remembered something like that. She would have laughed, told me she was too tired to recall. She would have teased me for barely saying a word to her that day. This thing wasn't her. And yet, she was sitting across from me, holding my gaze, smiling like she loved me more than anyone else in the world. It's been 3 months since then. Clara came home last week. She hugged the woman in the kitchen, cried into her shoulder, told her she'd missed her. I stood in the doorway, silent. Because Clara didn't notice. Clara didn't see what I saw. No shadow. The smile too wide. The humming at night when she thought I wasn't listening. And little by little, I can feel my memories slipping. Sometimes when I think of Mom, I picture her in scrubs, hair tied back, exhausted, but real. Other times, I see the smile, the too wide smile, and I can't tell anymore which one is the truth. The photos in the hallway, God help me, they've started to look different. In some of them, Mom's face is sharper, her eyes brighter, her smile wider, and Clara swears they've always looked that way. Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm wrong. But at night, when the house is quiet, I hear the knocks again. Faint, patient, and sometimes I wonder if I should open the door, just once, to see if maybe, just maybe, the real Mom is still out there waiting. For now, I pretend. I sit at the table. I answer when she calls my name, because if it's already too late, I don't want her to know I know. I never thought love and horror could become so tangled in my life, but it did, so tightly that sometimes I wonder if I'll ever escape the knots left behind. I was 27 when I met Daniel. He was 43, an associate lawyer at a mid-sized firm in Portland, Oregon. I had applied for a position there as a secretary after years of hopping between temp jobs, and somehow, through nerves and luck, I got it. Daniel was sharp, intimidating even, but not in the cruel way some men of power are. His wit was disarming, his calm voice strangely reassuring, and I quickly learned he was the kind of boss who noticed effort, even in the small things. What I didn't expect was how quickly we would cross the invisible line between professional and personal. He asked me to dinner one night after a long week at the office. I remember telling myself I should say no, that work and romance were a dangerous combination, but my heart ignored me. By the end of that first date, over Italian wine and low candlelight, I realized there was something magnetic about him. We slipped into a relationship naturally, as though we had always been waiting for each other. Despite working side by side, we kept things professional at the office. Daniel was demanding, yes, but fair. At home, he was attentive, kind, and funnier than anyone ever gave him credit for. For the first time in years, I felt secure. But I had a complication. My mother, Martha. When I was 23, she had been in a car accident. She survived, but the crash damaged her spine, leaving her in a wheelchair. Her head trauma wasn't severe enough to erase her memory, but it changed her. It was like parts of her had regressed. She could still cook simple meals, still laugh at her favorite shows, but her judgment and her emotions became childlike. Some days she was sweet, innocent, like a girl discovering the world. Other days she was bitter, controlling, and unpredictable. I'd been caring for her ever since. My father had died years before, so it was just us in the little house I grew up in. My life revolved around her needs, driving her to appointments, cooking, bathing her when she refused to let home nurses help. I loved her, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel trapped. Introducing Daniel to her was inevitable. At first, she smiled when he came around, but as his visits grew, her smiles soured. "Bad man," she muttered the second or third time he visited. "Bad man wants to take you away from me." I tried to laugh it off. "Mom, don't be ridiculous. Daniel is good to me." Her eyes narrowed, childlike yet sharp. "He's stealing you. You don't love me anymore." Daniel, to his credit, was endlessly patient. "We don't have to rush anything," he told me one night as we sat in his apartment. "If living together is too much for your mom right now, we can wait." I wanted to cry. "I feel selfish," I admitted. "I want a life with you, but I can't take care of her forever. She'll never accept anyone else in my world." He took my hand. "We could hire professional caregivers. You wouldn't be abandoning her. You'd just be sharing the responsibility." I nodded, but my guilt gnawed at me. Mom was only 60. She could live another 20 years. Did I really want to sacrifice mine to her paranoia and hostility? Months later, I couldn't take it anymore. Her nightly screams, "I know that man is here. Get him out of my house, Denise. You're a bad daughter," broke me down. I moved in with Daniel. With his help, I hired 2 women, former nurses named Lila and Brenda, to split shifts caring for Mom. Predictably, she hated it. She hurled insults, refused to eat meals they cooked, screamed at them. But slowly, as the weeks passed, she softened. The routine settled. When I visited on weekends, she seemed calmer, even happy at times. For a while, I felt like I'd found balance. I could have Daniel, and I could still care for Mom. But balance is fragile. One weekend, both nurses had requested time off. I agreed to stay with Mom. Daniel offered to help, but we both knew it would only upset her. That night, I slept in my old room. In the morning, I tried calling Daniel. No answer. Odd, but not alarming. By evening, still no reply. By midnight, I panicked. I drove to his apartment, ignoring Mom's shrieks from the window. "Don't you dare leave me again!" His place was empty. His phone was dead. The next day became the next week. Daniel was missing. The police opened an investigation, but answers were slow. I was drowning in dread. Forced by circumstance, I moved back home. Without Daniel's financial help, I couldn't keep paying the nurses. Mom was overjoyed. "You love me again," she said, her eyes bright with an almost childlike glee. "You're home where you belong." I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to ask if she had anything to do with his disappearance, but the thought felt insane. She was wheelchair-bound. She could barely cook without help. Right? Months passed. My grief grew heavier. And then, one cold morning, 2 officers knocked on the door. "Ma'am," one said, his voice steady, "we've recovered evidence in the disappearance of Daniel Price. We need to place your mother under arrest." The world tilted. "What?" "She's suspected of arranging his murder," he said flatly. "One of the caregivers has confessed partial involvement. We're still looking for another." I couldn't breathe. "You're saying my mother?" They moved past me into the living room. Mom sat in her chair, a blanket over her lap, smiling like a child caught sneaking cookies. "I didn't do anything," she shouted when they cuffed her. Then her voice changed, low and sharp. "He was taking you from me, Denise, bad man. I had to stop him." The confession, the rage, the calm afterward, it chilled me more than anything in my life. The investigation revealed everything. My father's old life insurance policy, Money I never knew existed. Mom had been sitting on it for years. She had used it to bribe the caregivers, faking her helplessness all along. The accident had left her in a wheelchair, yes, but the mental regression? A performance. An act designed to keep me chained to her. Daniel's body was found weeks later in a shallow grave outside the city. The nurses had been sloppy. Traces of evidence led back to them and to her. I haven't visited her since she was taken to prison. People ask me if I will, if I want answers. I don't. I know everything I need to know. The woman I called my mother never wanted me to live my own life. She wanted to own me, no matter the cost. But I lost Daniel, the love of my life. Now I live alone in a small apartment. I go to work. I pay bills. I wake up, breathe, sleep, repeat. But nothing feels real. My heart is buried in the same shallow grave as Daniel. Sometimes I dream of him, standing in the doorway of our old place, smiling at me like he used to. But then I wake up to silence, and the only thing I hear is my mother's voice echoing in memory. Bad man. Bad man wants to take you away. And in a twisted way, she succeeded. I was 10 years old the first time I realized my mother wasn't like other mothers. We were living in a 2-story house on the outskirts of Riverside, California. A pale stucco thing with peach-colored tiles and thin walls that made every argument sound like a thunderstorm. My friends had moms who cheered at soccer games, who packed lunches with little handwritten notes and snacks shaped like stars. My mom, Caroline, didn't do any of that. She sat in front of her vanity for hours, caked in makeup, obsessively tracing her wrinkles in the mirror like they were the map to her slow demise. When I was a child, I thought she was the most beautiful woman alive. Everyone did. People in the grocery store would turn their heads, whisper, but she never believed them. She was never satisfied with herself. Not when she was 29, not when she was 35, not when she was 45. By the time I was old enough to form memories worth keeping, she was already in decline. Not physically, she still had that glowing skin, long dark hair, and green eyes that could either melt you or freeze you, but mentally, she obsessed over weight, over looks, over me. "You'll thank me when you're older," she'd say, pushing away the bowl of macaroni I begged her for. "You don't want to end up like me, fat and miserable, do you?" I never said anything back. I just sat there hungry, feeling like I had somehow already failed her. Now I'm 27, and the irony is suffocating. She sits in that same chair, in front of that same vanity, only now her frame is so thin she looks like she could be snapped in half by a gust of wind. Her arms are papery, translucent. Her veins are rivers of blue. Her once full face is drawn tight over cheekbones, and she's smiling. That's what scares me most. "Look at me, Nathan," she says, spinning around in her chair like a little girl showing off a new dress. "I haven't been this thin since college." Her voice is airy, delighted, but beneath it I hear something jagged. She's been taking the pills again. The ones her friend, if you can call him that, gave her. Dangerous things imported illegally. Marketed as supplements but designed to burn fat at impossible speeds. I force a smile, but my stomach churns. "You look different," I say carefully. "Different? That's all you have to say?" She scoffs, turning back to the mirror. I look beautiful. I look like me again. The truth hangs heavy in my chest. She doesn't look like her. Not the woman who raised me. Not the glamorous figure from my earliest memories. She looks like a shadow of that woman. And yet, her smile is infectious. Against my will, I feel myself grinning back. People always asked why I never moved out. Why a grown man would still live with his mother when he had every opportunity not to. I had jobs, girlfriends, friends who offered me places to crash. But Mom had a way of pulling me back in. Some of it was guilt. My father left when I was 9, and she never stopped reminding me that I was all she had left. But most of it was something darker, harder to admit. I was bound to her, tethered in a way that went beyond family. It wasn't love. Not really. It was dependency. She needed me. Yes, but in a sick way. I needed her too. Even as an adult, she monitored everything I ate, how much I exercised, what women I dated. She'd tear them apart viciously, whispering in my ear about how cheap they looked, how common. She wanted me all to herself, and for the longest time, I let her have me. 3 weeks ago, she started taking them again. I didn't know at first she was secretive, sneaky, slipping them into her water like they were nothing more than vitamins, but the results were impossible to miss. In less than 2 weeks, she dropped nearly 50 pounds. At first, she was giddy. She'd pose in front of the mirror, laugh like a teenager. But then came the side effects. The dizziness, the sweats, the shaking hands. Maybe you should stop, I told her one night, watching her try to steady herself against the counter. She turned on me, those green eyes glowing with something venomous. Don't you dare take this from me, Nathan. Don't you dare. I shut up after that. But the worry never left me. She's in front of the mirror again, turning side to side, admiring her skeletal reflection. You know, she says, almost dreamily, I think people will finally love me now. Really love me. Not just tolerate me. Not just pretend. My throat goes dry. They already loved you, Mom. She tilts her head, smirks. Not enough. Never enough. But you love me, don't you? The way she says it makes my stomach twist. Like it isn't a question, but a test. Of course I do, I whisper. Her smile widens. Good boy. Later that night, she calls me into her room. She's sitting on the bed, pale and trembling, the pill bottle clutched in her hand. I had a dream, she says, her voice brittle. A dream where I died. My heart gave out. I had a dream, she says, her voice brittle. A dream where I died. My heart gave out. Just like that. I sit down beside her, uneasy. Then stop taking them. She looks at me, long and hard, before whispering, I can't, and neither can you. I frown. What does that mean? Her lips curve into a smile, the same smile she wore when I was a boy, and she'd corner me with one of her cruel truths. It means this is all part of the plan, Nathan. My plan, and yours too, though you don't realize it yet. She holds out a glass of water. In her palm, one single pill rests. Give it to me, she says softly, like you always do. I hesitate. My hand trembles as I take the pill, my mind racing with everything I've wanted, everything I've feared. She's frail. She's rich. She's all I have, and she knows it. As I place the pill in her hand, she catches my wrist. Her grip is ice cold but fierce. I know what you're thinking, she murmurs. You think you're tricking me. You think you're waiting for me to die so you can finally be free. But Nathan, she leans close, her breath hot against my ear. This was always what I wanted, for you to be the one to finish me. So you'll never escape me, not even when I'm gone. My blood turns to stone. She swallows the pill with a smile, lays back on the bed, closes her eyes. 10 minutes, she whispers. That's all. Don't call anyone until I'm cold. Don't touch anything. Just watch. And then, silence. The ticking of the clock on her nightstand grows unbearable. 5 minutes pass. Her chest rises, falls, then slows. 9 minutes. Her lips part. Her body jerks once, twice, then stills. 10 minutes. I sit there frozen, staring at her lifeless face, and all I can hear is her voice, echoing in my head. You'll never escape me. They said it was her heart. Too much stress on a frail body. No suspicion of anything else. Everyone offered condolences. Everyone told me how lucky I was to have had such a beautiful mother. But at night, when I close my eyes, I see her smile. That knowing smile. That smirk that told me she orchestrated everything. And in the silence of the dark, I feel her there beside me. Watching. Waiting. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'll never be free. I never really liked talking about my childhood in Riverside, California. Not because it was uneventful, but because one memory from when I was 5 years old still follows me like a shadow that never shrinks, no matter how much light I stand in. It wasn't the kind of memory that fades with time. It wasn't scraped knees on the pavement or the smell of sunscreen at the pool. It was the kind that left my mother clutching me too tightly for years afterward, and me growing up always second-guessing the kindness of strangers. Back then, my mom, Elena, was doing the best she could raising me on her own after my dad walked out. She was 27, juggling 2 part-time jobs and night classes, trying to give me something better than the chaos she'd grown up in. Sundays were the one day she promised would always be for me. No errands, no school, no rushing from one job to the next. Just me, her, and a little bit of sunshine if the weather cooperated. That particular Sunday, late spring of 2003, she took me to a playground about 10 minutes from our apartment. I remember the smell of cut grass and hot asphalt mixing together, the squeak of sneakers against the blacktop, and the way kids shouted over each other while their parents lingered on benches, nursing coffee cups or scrolling through flip phones. "Don't go too far, LJ," my mom called out. She always called me LJ, short for Lucas James. "I won't," I yelled back, already halfway up the ladder to the slide. I was 5, everything felt enormous. The slide towered like a skyscraper, the merry-go-round spun like a planet, and the world beyond the chain-link fence might as well have been another universe. But I always kept one eye toward my mom. She was sitting on a faded wooden bench, her brown hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, watching me with a smile that could steady me no matter how high I climbed. At least, until the moment I lost sight of her. It couldn't have been more than a minute. I was chasing another kid across the jungle gym, then ducked under the bridge, and when I popped back up, my mom wasn't there. The bench was empty. That's when a woman appeared. She looked to be in her 30s, blonde hair pulled into a bun, blue eyes that at first seemed warm, though now I can only describe them as sharp, like glass. She crouched down so we were eye to eye. "Lucas," she said, smiling as if we'd already met. I froze. Kids don't expect strangers to know their names. "Your mom had an emergency," she explained quickly, like she knew the question forming in my head. "She asked me to come get you. I'm her friend Melanie. She told me to take you to her right away." I didn't know this woman. I'd never seen her before in my life. But she said my name so confidently. She smiled like she meant it. And the thought of my mom needing me, that was enough to tug me forward. "Where is she?" I asked, my small voice breaking. "She's waiting, sweetheart," the woman said, offering her hand. "Come on, let's not keep her worried." I hesitated. My mom always told me not to go anywhere with strangers. But I was 5, and the idea that my mom might be hurt, might be calling for me, outweighed every warning. I slipped my hand into hers. Her palm was clammy. We walked fast across the playground, out past the chain-link fence. My mom's voice didn't come. No shout to stop. No frantic footsteps chasing behind me. Just the squeals of kids and the dull hum of traffic. I only realized something was wrong when I saw the car. It wasn't my mom's dented Toyota. It was a black sedan, polished, waiting at the curb. "Get in, Lucas," she said softly. My stomach nodded. "Where's my mom?" I asked. "She's waiting. Get in." Her tone sharpened. I hesitated again, but she opened the door, nudging me inside. The seat smelled like leather and something sweet, maybe perfume. She buckled me in before sliding into the driver's seat. The car pulled away, tires crunching over loose gravel. I pressed my forehead against the window, watching Riverside blur past familiar streets bending into ones I didn't know. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe my mom was just around the corner, but then she stopped at a gas station. It wasn't one I recognized. The sign was faded, the pumps old. She got out, smoothing her skirt like she was preparing for something. An older woman near the entrance looked at me, then back at her. I saw her point toward me, her mouth moving with words I couldn't hear. Melanie froze, then shoved the older woman hard enough to make her stumble. I remember my heart pounding. I remember thinking of my mom, sitting on the bench, realizing I was gone. "What's going on?" I whispered when she climbed back in. "Nothing you need to worry about," Melanie snapped. but her voice cracked. We drove again. Faster this time, turning corners so sharp I felt my body slide against the seatbelt. She muttered under her breath, words I didn't understand, except for the curse words. At the next gas station, things changed. She was pumping gas when another car pulled up beside us. A man stepped out, middle-aged, wearing jeans and a baseball cap. He glanced at her, then at me. His expression changed instantly, suspicion tightening his face. "Ma'am," he called. "Is that your daughter?" Melanie's smile looked glued on. "Of course she is." The man stepped closer. "There's a missing child report out. Matches her description." "That's ridiculous," Melanie said too quickly. He ignored her and looked straight at me. "Sweetheart, what's your name?" I froze. Melanie's eyes snapped to me, narrowing, her head giving the smallest shake, but something in the man's voice broke through the fear. "Allison," I blurted, tears spilling down my cheeks. My name came out. Wrong panic, twisted it, but he understood. His face hardened. He stepped closer. That's when Melanie moved. She yanked her car door open, grabbed something from the side pocket, a hammer. The sun caught the metal, and before I could even scream, she swung. The man collapsed. I screamed then, louder than I ever had. She floored the gas pedal, tearing the hose from the pump, tires screeching as we shot back onto the road. I sobbed into my hands, begging for my mom. Melanie's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Red and blue lights flashed in the rearview mirror. "No, no, no," Melanie muttered, her voice frantic. "They won't take you from me. I'm your mother now." The sirens grew louder. She swerved across lanes, but the police cars closed in. "Stay down," she shouted at me. "I won't let them have you." The car jolted, tires screeching as it spun sideways. I ducked, covering my ears as gunshots cracked through the air. The sound was deafening, bouncing inside the car. Then silence. The door yanked open. An officer's face appeared, shouting something I couldn't hear over the ringing in my ears. He pulled me out, clutching me tight as he ran toward safety. And then I saw her, my mother. She was crying, running toward me, her arms opening wide. I buried myself in her embrace, shaking so hard I thought my body would never stop trembling. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed into my hair. "One minute you were there, the next you were gone. I'm so sorry, baby." I held on tighter, afraid if I let go, she'd disappear too. Later, I learned the woman Melanie had lost her daughter a year earlier in an accident. Something in her broke, and she convinced herself she could replace the child she lost. That day, it had been me, but I wasn't hers to take. For years afterward, I couldn't stand playgrounds. Couldn't stand blonde women with smiles too wide. Even now, as an adult, I find myself flinching when someone says my name too confidently, like they've known me all along. Because once, a stranger almost convinced me I was hers, and if not for one man at a gas station, I might have been. I never thought I'd end up back in Riverside, California. Not after all the things I'd left behind here. But life has a way of circling back when you least expect it. My name is Clara Moreno, and I used to be what most people would call ordinary, a mother, a wife, a woman who cooked dinner at 6 p.m. sharp and made sure her son brushed his teeth before bed. That was before the nights got darker, before secrets became heavier than my bones, and before I learned that a mother's love can be twisted into something that terrifies even the child it's meant to protect. It all started with exhaustion. My muscles still ached from the night before, every tendon pulled tight as though someone had wrung me out like a rag. I stood over the bathroom sink, scrubbing at my hands. The faucet ran cold, and the water stung against the tiny cuts along my fingers. Dirt wedged itself stubbornly beneath my nails, and I hated it. God, I hated being dirty. Cleanliness was the one thing that gave me peace. As I rinsed, I glanced up into the mirror. My reflection startled me. Pale, too pale, my lips faintly cracked, hair loose in damp strands around my face. For a moment, I thought I saw blood at the corner of my mouth. Maybe I had bitten down too hard the night before. My ribs throbbed when I took a breath, the memory of struggle still etched into my bones. But despite the soreness, I felt something strange serenity. Outside, the night was quiet except for the distant cry of an owl. I looked through the window at the full moon, round and glowing. It always felt like it was watching me. It knew my secrets, and it never judged me for them. In that moonlight, I almost felt forgiven. I pressed my palms to the sink, leaned close to the mirror, and whispered, "For you, Michael. Everything for you." My son, my sweet boy, was asleep in the other room. He was 8 now, with lashes so long they fanned across his cheeks like tiny brushes. When he slept, he looked untouched by the world, pure, angelic. He didn't know about the evil things people did, the kind of evil that had been in our home before. I had made sure of that. I peeked into his room quietly, my chest softening at the sight of him curled beneath his blue blanket. He clutched a stuffed dinosaur under his chin. That was why I had done what I did. That was why my muscles screamed, why my hands would never feel clean again. Because I was his mother, his only mother now. I returned to the bedroom, where the mattress still bore the faint outline of someone else's body. My husband had been there just hours ago, before the knife, before the dirt, before the silence. The bed felt emptier than ever, but I told myself emptiness was safer than the weight of a monster lying beside me. I closed my eyes and imagined a different world, a world without crimes, without cruelty, a world where I could have as many children as I wanted, take them to the park, buy them ice cream on hot days, braid their hair or tie their shoelaces, whatever they needed. They would never know harm, never hear screaming in the night. They would only have me. But my dreams were fragile. They cracked under the echo of his voice, muffled and desperate, from beneath the dirt. The next morning, I forced myself up early. The California sun streamed through the kitchen windows, golden and merciless. I felt cold despite it, my skin chilled as if I lived beneath frost. I tried makeup, blush smeared carefully to mimic life, lipstick to disguise the paleness of my lips. In the mirror, I was almost convincing. Almost. "Michael, breakfast will be ready soon." I called gently, waking him. He shuffled into the kitchen, still groggy, rubbing his eyes. When he saw me, though, his expression faltered. His little brow furrowed. "Why are you wearing Mom's clothes?" he asked. The words landed heavy. I froze. He was confused, still half asleep, I told myself. He had to be. I knelt down, brushing a hand across his hair. "Honey, I am your mother. Have you forgotten me?" Michael shook his head slowly, his lips trembling. "Mom isn't supposed to be here. You're not her." A sting cut through me, sharper than any blade. I forced a smile, even though it felt wrong on my face. "Don't be silly. You've grown so well, my sweet boy. It feels like just yesterday you were so tiny. Come, let's eat. You still like Fruit Loops, don't you?" He frowned again. "I don't eat those anymore." His eyes searched mine, wary. "Are you my mom?" The crack inside me widened. My jaw tightened. But I kept my voice soft. "Of course, honey. Of course I am." He looked down at his hands, then whispered, "But Daddy said you died." Blood surged hot in my veins. My husband, that man. He had poisoned our son against me, told him lies. Lies, when he was the one who had driven the knife into my chest that night, trying to erase me. He hadn't succeeded. I had come back, stronger. For Michael. I turned back to the stove, gripping the pan too tightly. The handle slipped in my slick palm. My strength wasn't what it used to be, but I managed. I made eggs and toast, even though the utensils felt heavy, foreign in my grip. Michael ate quietly. His silence gnawed at me. I wanted him to talk, to laugh like he used to. I studied his face, memorizing every curve of his cheeks, every blink of his lashes. Afterward, as I cleaned the dishes, I saw at the knife, the one I had left behind last night. The blade still bore rust-colored stains. I reached for it, scrubbing at the dried blood. My fingers slipped, and the edge bit into my palm. Blood welled up instantly, trickling down. It didn't hurt. Not anymore. Michael's eyes widened as he watched. He didn't speak, but the silence between us stretched taut, unbearable. "Where's Dad?" he asked finally. I should have known he would. He was clever, too clever for his age. "He's in the backyard," I said evenly, still scrubbing. "Have you tried digging in the fresh dirt?" "He's there. He called for you all night long." The words hung in the air like smoke. Michael's lips parted, his breath hitching. Tears welled in his eyes. He understood. He knew. I dropped the knife into the sink with a clatter, the sound ringing through the kitchen. My bloodied hand trembled as I reached for a rag, wiping slowly, deliberately. I turned toward him, my voice steady. "Listen to me, Michael. Your father killed your real mother years ago. He made me kill her. He was a monster. But now, I've killed him. I've freed us both. You are safe with me. I am your mother. You must believe me." Michael shook his head, tears spilling down his cheeks. His small frame quivered as he whispered, "You're not her. You're not my mom." The fear in his eyes gutted me. But fear could be soothed, reshaped. He would learn. He would accept me. He had to. Because without him, I was nothing. I stepped closer, gripping his arm tightly, firmly, with a love that burned. "Hold Mommy's hand, child. You'll understand. I'll protect you from monsters, from all of them. I am your mother, forever." His sobs echoed through the house, colliding with the silence, colliding with my heartbeat. I pulled him closer, ignoring the way he stiffened, ignoring the terror that radiated from his little body. He would understand. He would love me back, even if it took everything I had, because a mother never lets go.